place called Elephant Mouse / Villain. We have 2 labels there. Previously, I was at a place called Mighty Rabbit Studios, and at Mighty Rabbit, I worked on these wonderful games that you see here. About 8 years ago, I came on to Mighty Rabbit as an artist. I was an environment artist because I wanted to be a level designer in the end. I was just like, oh, getting into design is going to be ridiculously hard, so I'm just going to go into art and see if I can wiggle my way into design eventually. And that's pretty much what happened. So when I got to Mighty Rabbit, I was the only artist, and I was doing level art, and I just kind of transitioned to doing level design, and then as soon as we start bringing other artists on, I just kind of transitioned into design overall. So, just to let you guys know, I'm cool with this being a back and forth, so if you have questions during it, don't wait to the end, just raise your hand, I'll talk to you. It's cool, we're friends, we're all friends. So, I'm going to define prototype as by what I mean in this talk. The word prototype is used around for a lot of different things, for different reasons, but as far as what we're talking about today, I want to have it discreetly defined. So, let me see my own slides on this right here. So, it's not a practice project. A lot of people will say they're working on a prototype and really they're just working on like their first game, or they're remaking Space Invaders, or they're just trying out something new. That's not what I mean by prototype. If it's a project that you're learning a new skill, that's not what I mean by prototype. If it's like your first project in Unity or your first project in Unreal or whatever, that's not what I mean by prototype. Learning new tools can be a helpful side effect for prototyping, but it shouldn't be your main goal. It's not a game jam. Game jams are generally supposed to be a complete, complete limited experience that a player can play, and prototypes don't have complete feature sets. They can often be unplayable by people not directly involved with the development of that prototype. It's not an alpha build. Prototypes, they shouldn't have extraneous features that have nothing to do with the exact thing that you're currently prototyping. An alpha build would have features that a full game would need, but a prototype would probably not need most of these features. So you wouldn't need, so if you're prototyping a combat system, you're not going to necessarily need to account for leveling up in an RPG or something like that. You want to just go ahead and prototype only the exact thing that you're trying to figure out. It's also not a showcase of skills. A lot of people will put a lot of time into their prototypes because they think that's what they're going to be judged on. The best way to go at a prototype is to know that nobody will ever look at it besides you and maybe your teammates. If you put too much time into trying to showcase either your design skills or your art skills, you're just wasting time. So you want to just worry about what you're trying to get out of the prototype. You don't want to worry about what other people are going to get out of that prototype, because it's not for them, it's for you. It's a learning tool for you. And it's not pretty. Prototypes are not supposed to be pretty. If your prototype is pretty, you've probably gone wrong somewhere. It's there just for you to learn. In the instance of prototyping that I'm talking about, it's there for you to learn gameplay mechanics and figure out just answering different questions that you have about your own game. What it is, though, sorry. It's a proof of concept experiment. So it's like procedures validate or refute a hypothesis. You will be answering a question with your prototype, just like a scientist would experiment with something. You're doing it to make a discovery. It's a proof of concept, so a way to share with your teammates that an idea works and that it can work in a bigger scheme of things with everything that you're working on. It's supposed to be fast, rapid. You gotta get them out as quickly as possible. You're not, if you, like I said, if you spend too much time trying to hard it up or make it perfect, you're wasting time. You gotta figure out what works and what doesn't work. It's also supposed to be disposable. If you start off with a prototype knowing that you're going to throw it away, you end up not wasting time on trying to make everything perfect. If you know that the actual production project is going to be separate from what you're working on currently, you're not going to spend time, if you're a programmer, you're not going to spend time making reusable code. You're not going to spend time making things that can be expandable. You're just going to spend time getting exactly what you need working as fast as possible. And don't get tied to any one aspect of a prototype. Be okay with throwing it away and not looking back. And it's a learning tool. So, not really a learning tool as in you're trying to learn a new skill, but more you're learning about your game itself. So, one way to look at it is like a Rosetta Stone. You have your prototype, it develops a language. You know what jump means in your game. You know what dodge means in your game. You know what walk and run means in your game. And by developing that prototype, you can share it with your teammates and you guys have a common language from there. All right, so you guys probably remember this from elementary school. It's probably hung up in some of the walls there. It's a scientific method. And well, that one's a pretty good picture. This one's a little bit more accurate for our purposes. See, I really can't see the slides on my computer here. Let's see real quick. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to go over here and look, because it is not working on. Oh, that comes off sweet. All right, so the scientific method, I mean, you guys probably all know this from elementary school science. You ask a question, do research, construct a hypothesis, experiment, and analyze. With our question, that's usually the basis of what you're trying to figure out with the game. Every prototype is to answer a question. So it's the most important process. Part of the process is asking the right question. The question will be the basis of every step you take on your prototype. If you're doing something for the prototype that's not going to help answer that question, then it's time to step back and realign yourself with the goal. So the most basic of questions is this game idea a good one? So if you have an idea, you want to test it out, you know, just whatever it is, that's going to be your first question generally. Starting with a question as broad as that is usually not a great idea. You want to get a little bit more specific. So do these two specific mechanics work together nicely? That way you can start your prototype with a little bit more of a discrete destination. So you're not trying to go all over the place of what is good, what is bad. You want to figure out, do these two things work together well? Like something like this idea for a combat system work. That's another thing that's, you're not sitting here thinking, is this game good? You just want to figure out if it works. That's a good first step to go to. And something that's another thing is, will this tech be a good fit for your project? So that's not necessarily gameplay prototyping, but it's a good way, prototypes can generally be used for figuring out if this new thing that you want to use in your project would be a good fit or not. Do research. You guys do this every day because it's just playing games. So if you had a question that you're trying to answer, a game idea that you're trying to make work, go figure out if somebody else has done it. Go figure out if people have put those two ideas together before. Go play games that somewhat in line with the idea that you have. So if somebody has already answered the question that you're asking, say if these two mechanics, they work together, and you find a game that does that exact same thing, there's probably no need to prototype. You can see exactly how it works already and if it worked. If you're not answering a new question, then it really comes down to implementation and execution. Having a prototype is not going to help with that. And yeah, if you don't find out that somebody's already answered your question, go ahead and search for anybody that's gotten close or has answered part of the question. That way you can move on to the prototype and know that you don't have to answer these questions that they've already answered. So just move on, get things working as fast as possible. So, constructing hypothesis. So this is where we're going to get to the meat of actually prototyping things. And this is going to be the thing that changes the most. And when I'm talking about this stuff, this isn't going to be like a formal thing that you do every time you iterate. This is just something that you want to think about. If you get stuck, you're going to step back and say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to come back here and start with a hypothesis. Are they going to work together? Put them in, find out. Is it easy to understand? Just different things that you have a, this is your guess of what's going to happen. So, the experiment itself, this is where you build the game. Yeah, this is where it starts. This is where you get into the engine or get all your tools out and get ready to go. Now you want to start it as bare bones as possible, get it working fast. The number one goal you should have as soon as you start the prototype is get it playable. No matter what it is, just get it playable, and then you can actually start answering those questions one bit at a time and start actually having more defined hypothesis. Yeah, like start as bare bones as possible, getting exactly what you need to test that hypothesis, to prove out that guess that you had. So, analyze. It's easy. It's play testing. You're constantly going to be play testing. Every time you make a change, you're going to play test. Every time you play test, you should make a change. That is, every bit of feedback that you're going to have from any changes you make is going to be found out by play testing. You're going to be play testing it yourself the most as a designer, just so you don't really have to worry about too much about what anybody's going to think until you get it to a place that you know it answers your guess, and then as soon as you feel like it's answered your guess, then you have somebody from the outside come in. You have to be careful about who you bring in to help you test, so you want to have somebody that's close to you on the project, or at least understands what you're doing, and is kind of on not necessarily on the level that you are, but at least is kind of thinking in the same direction. So if you're a designer, you want to bring somebody who has at least a design in mind at first, because there's a lot of things that you can skip if you're not designing a prototype for people who have no idea what you're doing to play. So communicate results. It doesn't fit the word communicate results doesn't fit everything as nicely as the rest of the scientific method does. It really is just the communicate results part is put it in a game, start production. This is the last step. This is after you've been iterating a lot. So speaking of iteration, most of the efforts that you're going to be making on a prototype are going to happen here, and this should be constantly going. You're playing the game that you just made. You figure out if it answered the question or if it proved out your guess or not. If it didn't, go back to another guess, you know, keep changing up what your guess is going to be, or what you have to actually put in. And keep doing it over and over and over again, playing it constantly. That's the thing about prototyping. You're constantly play testing, and you're constantly changing things. If you are play testing the same thing again and again, you're not changing something, then you're wasting time. If you're changing a bunch of things and you're not play testing after every significant change, you're wasting time. Something that a lot of people don't really think about and is really useful, especially with certain types of games like turn-based games, or if you have a lot of skill trees or anything like that, is paper prototyping. Especially with anything turn-based, RPGs, even RTS, is like, there's a lot you can do with paper a lot quicker than you can do inside an engine. Because all it takes is pen, paper, some scissors sometimes, dice, coins, any little things that you can use to just prove out an idea. You can iterate it a lot quicker. Multiplayer is a lot easier to implement that way because you just have somebody sit on the side and you explain the rules to them. You have a notebook where you have your rules that you write down. Oh, that didn't work, let me try this. Okay, that worked, change your rules. It's so quick, so fast. So if it's something that you can do for your game, that you can do for your prototype, definitely paper prototyping, it's the way to go. Does anybody have any questions so far? So I'm kind of blazing through this. Shortcuts, quick and dirty, always the best option. Just get it in. Doesn't matter what it's like. Doesn't matter if it's optimized. Doesn't matter, if it's buggy as all get out. Just get it in. Get it working. Get it to where you can test it. Like I said, it's horrible advice for production. Like this isn't a talk about in production games. It's a talk about prototyping. So do not do that in production. But like if you're just trying to figure out something, get it in quick. Yeah, take the path of least resistance. So do what you know. If you know Unity, use Unity. If you know Unreal, use Unreal. Don't try to learn a whole new thing to get a prototype done. That's a different project altogether. That's you learning a different skill. Just use what you can to get it done and get it done quickest. Yeah, the engine you prototype doesn't have to be the one you use production. So if you're comfortable with Unity, even though you're going to have a game that's going to come out in Unreal eventually, if you're working on a big team or whatever, just prototype in Unity. It really doesn't matter. I think Red Storm prototypes everything in Unity, and I think EA did the same thing. Even though the final games didn't end up in Unity, it was what some of the designers were comfortable in, and something they could iterate fast in. It doesn't really matter what you pick for the prototype, as long as it's something that you can work in quickly. Yeah, if you're making something like RPGs or something, use RPG Maker. It doesn't matter. Even if it's something that you're gonna port to Unreal, if the gameplay concepts don't depend on the game being 3D, even though it's going to be a 3D game later, it doesn't matter. Just if RPG Maker is what fits and it's flexible enough for you to work your prototype in, use it. It doesn't matter. Visual scripting. Even if you're a programmer, visual scripting for a prototype it's super valuable and useful. Because I know how programmers are, you guys want to make everything useful again and optimized, those weird, silly words, and expandable. It's all a waste of time when you're prototyping. It could come in handy later, but if you're going at prototyping with the view that you're going to throw it all away, I've known a lot of programmers that just get stuck on trying to make the perfect code while we haven't even got the game playable yet. What's up there? Okay, great boxing. In Unity, I think they just put it in Pro Builder now. grab a prototype, just drag around boxes. It's so easy just to take a box, scale it to be the environment that you want. Doesn't need to be a detailed environment, doesn't need to look like the thing that it's going to be. Just get boxes in there to represent play space. And Unreal has BSP. It's kind of a big hunk of trash, but it's still easier than trying to go into to going back and forth between the engine and a 3D modeling app. Just throw in BSP, get the level that you want to. Don't spend a lot of time going between a 3D modeling app and an engine. Templates. If there's a template, just like Unreal has a ton of templates ready to go, use it. Like, don't be proud. Don't think you have to roll everything yourself. Just if there's a platforming template, which there is, and you're going to make a platformer, grab it, make it suit your needs, because it'll get you there. It'll get you to playing the game a lot faster than if you try to roll everything yourself. Asset packs, plugins, they save a lot of time. Even ones that cost money are going to save you a lot more time than those things cost. Because even the most useful ones, sometimes $20, $40. I think $90 is considered expensive on the asset stores, and they have full systems. A lot of them have example projects that you can just pop in. Oh, that works. Well, I only need to change this much stuff to make it be the prototype that I'm going after. Just do it. Yeah, like I said, don't have any pride in a prototype. You're using this as a tool, not a showcase. So grab asset packs, grab plugins, whatever it takes to get there the fastest. Yeah, if you have previous projects and prototypes that you've built, if they will help you in any way prove the point that you're trying to make, then use them. Dig through your old libraries and stuff. Dig through your old SVN projects, everything. Just if there's something useful in there, dig it out. If it's going to save you time, use it. Another thing is programming and designing AI is really, really hard. It's especially if you want it to actually be useful and somewhat decent. It's going to take a long time for you to figure out what the AI needs to do with the rules of your prototype. So it's not worth it. If there's any way possible that you can just replace AI with another player, if you can bring another teammate on or anything, just put in multiplayer. Putting network multiplayer is a lot easier than trying to design or implement AI. If you have to get people to play roles, like they're role-playing enemies, they're role-playing different AI in the game. If you're wasting time putting AI in a prototype just to prove a point, you're not being very rapid. It's stupid easy to put multiplayer in stuff like Unreal. It's literally just a mouse click for Unreal. Unity is a little bit tougher, but getting same screen multiplayer is not that hard. Okay. I was going to do this. Imagination. If you're just playing by yourself, just try to assume things as much as possible, because if you can save a little bit of time not implementing something that you can kind of figure out how it's going to play out by pretending and playing make-believe inside the game, and you can rule out things quickly. Like if you say, even stupid stuff like this level that you're playing, instead of saying, oh, well, I want this floor to be lava, instead of it just being the end of a drop, then act like it's lava. Just, oh, you fell, restart it. Just hold yourself to those constraints instead of implementing them. If there's anything that you can do just by kind of, pretending, it saves a lot of time. It can only work in abstraction up to about, one or two times, because once you start trying to keep too many things in your head of, I'm pretending this is happening, I'm pretending this is happening, it's really easy to lose track of everything that's going on. So, but if you're only going one step off of where you currently are, just pretend, kind of figure out if it feels right. Use your intuition if it's something that you feel like you should actually try to implement or not. Yeah, that doesn't really work with showing other people. So it's really just you as a designer, kind of figuring out for yourself if this is a thing that's worth implementing, and if it is, implement it, and then have other people give it a shot. So, art and prototype. Like I said before, it doesn't need to be pretty. It should not be pretty. It should be ugly. Detail, you don't worry about any small details in the art, of course. You know, realism, none of that matters when you're just trying to get a prototype off the ground. Cohesion, still doesn't matter. It's just, it's all a waste of time trying to get that perfect while you're prototyping gameplay. So what is important is contrast. So, you know, if you have, you know, enemies rolling as a different color as the player, just have things contrasting each other. Make sure that players don't blend in with the background, and that leads into readability. Just make sure everything is clear to the player. It doesn't have to be pretty; it just has to be readable. Feedback, so effects, things like that the player will see and feel when they're playing the game. That stuff matters. And scale, obviously, that's going to matter a lot for gameplay. And unfortunately, animation matters a lot when getting gameplay for certain action games, any kind of third-person action games. It's a lot different feeling when you have sword guy doing this versus, you know, having a lot of weight to it. That's the unfortunate part of art and prototypes is animation is a big deal in it. If you have an animator for a third-person action game that's helping you out, it's going to go a long way. But otherwise, you're just going to have to try to find animations on the store and try to make them work for what you can. So, I got about 30 minutes left, so I kind of flew through that. Questions?
So, a question about audio in prototyping, because I've heard different stories from different game designers, and some people say, like, I don't want to put cruddy audio in because psychologically that really changes the way I would feel about it. Mm-hmm. And some people would say, oh yeah, put your cruddy audio in there, knowing that it's a prototype, and I'm curious. But
yeah, it's feedback. Whether it's cruddy or not, I don't think it really matters as much, as long as it kind of gets that feedback to you. So if you feel like, you know, the effects aren't enough, that a hit doesn't feel like a hit, then yeah, throw some hit audio in there. If you feel like you're making, on the music side, if you feel like you're trying to get a speedy game, throw a random track of death metal or whatever you want to in the game. The quality of it's maybe not so much as what you feel when you do it. Like, I'm not a sound designer, so I don't necessarily know the difference between a good hit and a bad hit, but if I feel like, oh, that feels like it connected, then that's good enough as a designer. It's really just a feel thing. And iteration, of course. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I love the prototypes. I love the exercise of like taking Donkey Kong and turning it into a dice paper prototype mapping and like figuring out how all of the timing works. My question is, do professional game designers ever do paper prototypes, or is that just
oh yeah. I've talked to a few people. That's kind of a thing. They'll for when they're starting off projects, they'll just get everybody together and start hashing out. There's different, like, because you're basically making a board game in a way, and so you get a lot of people involved, and it's a lot quicker iteration, especially if you have a group of designers. I've definitely used paper prototyping and things before, and it speeds things along a lot. So, and I've known quite a few other designers. There's a game workshop at GBC, a game design workshop, and that's kind of basically their whole thing is we're going to teach you how to paper prototype because it helps move things fast. Did I answer your question? Or? Yeah.
What's a prototype that you've done that was not successful? You said, well, this is not what I wanted to happen, but what did you learn from that you can apply to something that was successful later?
So there's been a few. So there was a VR prototype I did where this was early on in VR when we just got our a Vive. It was still a dev kit. We got it, and I thought, man, it'd be great if we could have a game that expands all directions. And I was like, okay, let's, it was kind of an infinity thing. You shoot that way, and there would be the bullet that you shot would come out from behind you. You turn around, you can see the same enemy behind you that there was in front. I got it up working, put the VR helmet on, got into it, and immediately was overwhelmed. And I was like, oh, well, this game idea was crap. Just trying to keep track of everything was not a good idea. So, I mean, I think that was a lesson that was learned pretty quickly in VR after that. But ever since then, when I did continue to do a few more VR prototypes, I kept it in very much a narrow range. This is where all the action is in front of you at all times. There was another one, a game we called Polar Opposition that I did at Mighty Rabbit. I actually ended up prototyping it a little bit after I left Mighty Rabbit, and the whole idea is you were switching colors. It was kind of like Towerfall meets Ikaruga, and it was another thing where it was too much to keep track of because everything was happening so fast. Because we had a fast-paced gameplay with Ikaruga, and you had 4 people on screen, and you're trying to keep track of who is what color at one time, and you're overwhelmed. Even when it was just 2 players, it was too much trying to switch back and forth with the color swapping. It just overwhelmed the player really quick. So that's usually a quick indicator that you're going the wrong way is how quickly people get overwhelmed.
At what point does a prototype become an alpha draft?
Hopefully it doesn't.
Ideally.
Ideally, you scrap most of the prototype and just bring in snippets of code if you need to and the ideas that you learned, because you want to start your project. You're going to start your project in a whole lot different way than you start your prototype. So you figure out if this prototype is meeting the needs that you want and it's answered the questions correctly, and you feel like, okay, this is a viable thing, and then that's when you just kind of restart production. And you start from the ground up, whatever your production style is. And it's when you get the team on, you get concept going. If you have, people that are on your team that are concept artists, that's when you start that. So hopefully, ideally, your prototype would never actually transition to being an alpha, because hopefully you're just building just a very small section of the game to just test out. And you would want to structure the actual project itself, in a much more neat and efficient way. So, yeah, it does happen sometimes where people bring prototypes and start doing production on them, and a lot of times it's because you don't have time to restart everything. From what I've seen, that's caused more issues than been helpful. If you've gone through the steps to do the prototype, you're going to be able to restart everything again pretty quickly because you know what pitfalls there already are. So it's just better off to start from scratch after getting a successful prototype.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
To build off of that, because you're probably the perfect person to speak about this, if you do get trapped in a position where you don't have enough time to restart and you have to use your prototype, how do you best structure your prototype in the event that might happen? Because, we didn't do that at all.
And I wish I had a better success story to go along with that. Because every time we've always ended up having to go back and fix the whole thing. So you end up just patchworking it, and if you really just need to release something, just patchwork it enough to get it to work, and hopefully the bugs won't pop up later. It's just a thing of you know, putting out fires when they come up, and just try to keep that core that actually did work for the prototype working. And you know, sometimes it's you have to let go. So you know, we were in a position where we had to let go of a project because it just wasn't working out, even though it started as a prototype and we pushed forward on it. You know, and hopefully it works out sometimes, but you know, if it's if you have a good programmer that can restructure everything, I mean, that's really the best way to do it instead of just trying to brute force like we have.
How important is it to look in like public feedback on the prototype outside of redevelopment?
So on a prototype, I would never consider bringing public feedback into it. You want to get your friends and people that you trust, because especially if while you're making the prototype, you don't want to have to consider what it's going to look like to the public and how it's going to reflect on you. What you want for public feedback is a demo, which is necessary. You might be able to build it out of the prototype if you have to, but that's another thing that I would say that's maybe the alpha build that you've kind of sectioned off. Yeah, I just would generally try not to have public people touching your prototype. Just keep it to friends and teammates. And hopefully you have enough friends and teammates that can give you good feedback. Try, you know, if you need to reach out to other designers in the community, there's plenty of people, especially around here, that can give you feedback, and it gives you a lot more confidence as you're working on it, that you won't have to have Joe Blow judging you on the state of this because they're not quite sure what the process is. Any questions? Want to wrap up early?